From the moment Maya Jefferson stepped inside the courthouse, the heat of unspoken judgment enveloped her like a dense fog. She had long grown accustomed to the subtle slights and sidelong glances, but nothing prepared her for the open hostility she felt that day. Whispers rippled across the gallery benches, fueled by rumors and prejudice. At the plaintiff's table, two uniformed officers smirked with grim confidence. A stern judge, rumored to side with law enforcement whenever possible, cleared his throat as he prepared to address the court. But no one expected the truth lurking beneath Maya's calm demeanor. She was ready. She had a devastating secret weapon that would rock the entire room. Maya's day began like any other. She woke before sunrise in her modest Brooklyn apartment, located near the bustling intersection of Fulton and Nostrand. The gentle hum of early morning traffic lulled her into her routine. Coffee, a brisk walk to clear her mind, then a train ride into Manhattan's busy legal district. Dressed in a pressed blouse and navy slacks, she mentally reviewed her schedule. A long list of errands for the Department of Justice awaited her that day, a docket filled with motions to file and briefs to read. Despite the mountain of responsibilities, she felt a quiet thrill. She loved her job and the privilege it gave her to help others, especially those often overlooked by the system. She never anticipated that her day would take a sharp turn when she decided to drive instead of taking the subway. A call had come about a legal matter in the neighboring Queens neighborhood, and Maya wanted the flexibility of her car. She navigated through the morning rush hour traffic, weaving cautiously past impatient commuters. Soft R&B played on the radio, and a gentle melody eased her stress. She felt at peace until a siren screamed behind her. Glancing in her rearview mirror, she spotted a police cruiser tailing her. The lights flashed red and blue, dancing ominously against the surrounding buildings. Maya's pulse quickened, though she had done nothing wrong. She signaled and pulled over, her heart thumping. Reminding herself to stay calm, she knew the standard protocol. Keep your hands visible, wait for the officer to approach, and comply with instructions. Still, her mind swirled with memories of countless news stories about black motorists being harassed or harmed during routine stops. Moments later, two officers stepped out. One was tall and lanky with pale skin and a mustache that hung limply above thin lips, Officer Troy Miller. The second officer, Kevin Rohr, was heavier set, his face red from either the wind or irritation. They both approached Maya's window with a swagger that signaled authority. Maya lowered her window, greeted them politely, and asked how she could help. Officer Miller demanded her license, registration, and proof of insurance, his tone clipped, bordering on hostile. Maya complied without hesitation, handing over her documents. She asked why she'd been stopped, but her question was met with a dismissive wave of Miller's hand. Officer Rohr smirked, leaning closer to peer inside her car. Maya tightened her grip on the steering wheel, that sense of caution building in her chest. "You were speeding back there," Miller finally answered, doing 45 and a 30. Maya knew she hadn't been speeding. She had been carefully watching for pedestrians and bicyclists in the busy neighborhood, staying at or below the speed limit. But she also knew that any sign of argument could escalate the situation. Taking a calm breath, she reminded herself to stay composed. She kept her voice steady, knowing the importance of staying calm and in control, despite the growing tension in the air. The situation wasn't just about to stop. Maya, a U.S. attorney, had learned how to navigate the subtle and overt challenges of the legal and social systems. But this moment felt different. She was about to expose something far greater than a simple traffic stop. The day was not just about the routine matters she had planned. It would be a turning point, one that no one in that courthouse would ever forget. Maya's knowledge of the law and her awareness of how these encounters often went helped her remain steady. "Officer," she replied calmly, "I believe I was under the limit. Is there any possibility you might have clocked the wrong car?" Officer Rohr rolled his eyes. "I don't make mistakes with my radar gun. Listen, lady, are you going to give us trouble?" Maya reined in her frustration. She was no stranger to microaggressions, but something about the officer's demeanor suggested more than just a casual insult. She had to choose her words carefully. "I'm not trying to give you any trouble. I'm just asking for clarity." Miller's thin lips curled into a sneer. He took a step back, consulting with Roar in hushed tones. Though Maya couldn't hear all of their conversation, she caught bits and pieces. Something about attitude and these people. Her eyes narrowed. She had heard enough coded language in her life to recognize what was happening. A spark of anger ignited inside her. Officer Miller returned the car and ordered, "Step out of the car." Search for what reason? Maya asked, her heart pounding. She knew that for a search to happen, they needed either probable cause or consent, which she had every right to refuse. Roar huffed, leaning forward again. "Are you resisting, ma'am?" Maya shook her head, maintaining a composed tone. "I'm not resisting. I'm just asserting my right to ask why I'm being searched. That's all." The tension escalated quickly. Miller yanked on the door handle. "Get out of the car now." Maya exhaled sharply and opened the door, stepping out slowly, her hands visible. People on the sidewalk began to slow, curious about the scene unfolding. Maya noticed the sideways glances and the subtle shock or discomfort on bystanders' faces. Somewhere in the crowd, a phone camera was raised, capturing the moment. She set her jaw in determination. If they wanted to play this game, she would comply, but only to a point. As Maya stood beside her car, Officer Roar patted her down brusquely, while Miller rummaged through the back seat. Maya had never felt so violated. Every time she tried to speak, Roar snapped at her to stay quiet. She complied, though her anger simmered just beneath the surface. She wasn't just any passerby. She was a future United States attorney, someone who had worked tirelessly to uphold justice. She was intimately familiar with the law, and she knew the boundary these officers were crossing. Eventually, Miller slammed the back door. "Nothing here. Let's just write her up for speeding and maybe resisting an officer." "Resisting?" Maya repeated, alarmed. "I cooperated fully." Roar smirked again. "We'll see what the report says." The officers had no idea they had just picked a fight with someone who possessed extensive legal expertise. Someone who, with a single phone call, could set a serious investigation into motion. But Maya held her cards close. She wasn't about to reveal her position just yet. She wanted to see how far they would take the charade. With her heart pounding, she promised herself she would fight back. This injustice would not go unanswered. As the officers drove away, leaving her with a speeding summons and the threat of additional charges, Maya felt herself trembling, though not with fear. She trembled with a blazing fury. The calm facade she displayed during the encounter had been her shield, honed over years of enduring casual racism, dismissive stares, and sneering comments that chipped away at her sense of belonging. It was a shield she had carefully constructed out of pride, dignity, and, most of all, resolve. Long before she had the power to prosecute cases, Maya Jefferson had been a young girl growing up in the heart of Brooklyn. Her parents, Malcolm and Loretta Jefferson, instilled in her a profound sense of justice from an early age. Her father was a history professor at CUNY, specializing in African American studies. Her mother was a social worker who advocated for low-income families. Dinner table conversations revolved around civil rights heroes, systemic oppression, and ways to fight for those who lacked the means to stand up for themselves. Maya learned from stories of ancestors who marched in Selma or staged sit-ins, drawing from the unbreakable spirit of resistance. But she also learned that real change didn't come easily or quickly. It came from persistence, from standing up and demanding justice, no matter how daunting the fight might seem. That a blend of passion and strategic thinking was required for Maya's journey. When she was just 9 years old, she witnessed a tense argument between her uncle and a police officer who had roughly handled him without cause. Maya remembered feeling small and powerless, tears stinging her eyes. The image of a grown man forced to stand there while he was unjustly berated never left her mind. That moment ignited a desire within her to pursue law, to become someone who could challenge the abuse of power at its highest levels. In high school, Maya excelled in debate club, quickly becoming known for her sharp intellect and composure under pressure. She also volunteered at a local community legal aid office, where she saw firsthand how the law could serve as both a sword and a shield. A kindly lawyer named Sharon Fields mentored Maya, teaching her the basics of legal research and the importance of compassion. Sharon often said, "Empathy, Maya, empathy. Without it, you become just another cog in a broken system." At Columbia University, Maya double majored in political science and African American studies. She often found herself in heated seminars on systemic racism, where her personal experiences and academic research blended into a deep conviction that the justice system needed to be reformed from within. She graduated with high honors, moved on to NYU School of Law, and later landed a coveted clerkship at the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York. Her supervisors recognized her unwavering commitment to civil rights. When Maya moved on to a position with the Department of Justice in the Eastern District, it felt like destiny. Over the years, Maya cultivated a keen understanding of the law's complexities and its potential to be wielded for good. She carried with her the stories of her family, her mentors, and the countless victims of injustice. She made a personal vow. If she ever encountered a situation of blatant racial discrimination, she would confront it head-on. Maya believed in systemic change, but she also knew that sometimes the path to that change required bold, individual stands. After the confrontation with officers Miller and Rohr, Maya's mind churned. The memory of their sneering faces and the humiliation of being searched on the sidewalk for no legitimate reason refused to fade. The old rage of feeling powerless surged again, but this time she was no helpless child. She had the means and the authority to fight back. Once home, she sat at her kitchen table, the smell of fresh coffee still hanging in the air. The summons lay next to her laptop, like a badge of injustice. She wanted to shred it in frustration, but she knew better. This was more than just a ticket. It was evidence. Maya opened her laptop and quickly typed a memo summarizing the events. She included the time, location, and the details of the officer's conduct. She described the racist undertones, their bullying tactics, and their threat to add bogus charges for resisting. Her notes were precise. Every detail mattered for a potential investigation. Then, she made a call to an old friend, Marcus Reed, a fellow attorney who worked in a different branch of the Justice Department. Marcus had been her classmate at NYU, a brilliant litigator with a passion for rooting out police misconduct. Maya didn't give him all the details over the phone, just enough so he understood this was serious and might require federal oversight. Marcus agreed to help in any way he could. Throughout the evening, Maya's emotions whirled between simmering anger and resolute determination. She thought of her parents, who had always stood up for what was right. She thought of Sharon Fields, who had taught her the power of empathy and strategy. She thought of all the people who had been in her situation, lacking the resources or knowledge to fight back. Maya refused to let this incident be swept under the rug. "Tomorrow," she whispered aloud, locking her notes in her home safe. "Tomorrow I take the first step." The morning sunlight filtered through Maya's window, gilding her living room with a soft glow. She woke feeling more determined than ever, but also with a sense of calm resolve. It was time to take action. This was no longer just about a single incident. It was about justice, about standing up for the rights of those who had been wronged. And Maya was ready to lead the charge, a gnawing unease lingered in Maya's mind about what might happen next. She was accustomed to legal battles unfolding behind stacks of briefs and motions, not on the side of a city street in front of random onlookers. Still, she was prepared to face the situation head-on. After showering and dressing in a crisp navy suit, Maya meticulously organized her documents. She had a meeting later that afternoon regarding another case, but her thoughts kept drifting back to how she would address the incident with officers Miller and Rohr. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus, confirming their lunchtime meeting at a nearby cafe. Maya exhaled, grateful to have support from a friend who understood the intricacies of federal law and the complexities of racial profiling cases. She locked her apartment door behind her and took the subway, partly to avoid any additional run-ins with local law enforcement. Arriving at the Department of Justice building, Maya passed through security with her usual professional smile, though inside, she was bracing herself. She carried the summons in a neat envelope tucked securely under her arm. Her day was consumed by meetings and phone calls until finally noon arrived. She slipped out of the building and made her way to the bustling cafe where Marcus waited. He rose to greet her, his warm smile subdued by concern. Marcus was a tall man with a welcoming presence, but his expression now reflected the seriousness of the situation. They ordered coffee and sandwiches and sat by a window overlooking the street where midday traffic rumbled by. Maya recounted the entire story: the supposed speeding violation, the forced car search, the humiliating pat-down, and the officer's racist undertones. Marcus listened intently, his eyebrows furrowed. By the time she finished, he seemed as incensed as she was. "These guys have no idea who they're dealing with," he said softly but firmly. "But it's bigger than that. This is exactly what we talk about all the time: abuse of power under the guise of law enforcement." Maya nodded. "I'm worried they'll file a false report or escalate." They mentioned resisting arrest. If they put that on the record, it could tarnish my reputation. Even if I can clear my name, I don't want to think about how it could harm others. They stop exactly. Marcus agreed, cutting her off. "We need to be strategic. Are you thinking of reporting this to Internal Affairs or going straight to the Civil Rights Division?" "I'm thinking both," Maya said, tapping her pen on the table. "I can also file a formal complaint through the City Civilian Complaint Review Board, but I want to wait and see if they actually file any official charges. If they do, I'll reveal my credentials in court if necessary." Marcus hesitated. "That'll be a bombshell, but Maya, be careful. Some judges hate surprises in their courtroom. Then again, if the judge isn't on it, well, you said these guys are known for intimidation. Maybe they have connections." Maya's jaw tightened. "I'll handle it. Right now, I'm going to gather more evidence. I'm sure there were bystanders who recorded some of it on their phones. I'll see if I can track down any witness statements." After lunch, Maya returned to her office. She spent part of the afternoon searching social media, scanning hashtags and local neighborhood pages to see if any videos had been posted of her encounter. She discovered one short clip on Twitter that showed Officer Rohr pushing her against the side of her car while Officer Miller rummaged through the back seat. The video wasn't long, but it clearly showed Maya was calm and cooperative, with no sign of resistance. Maya downloaded the clip immediately, carefully documenting its source. Just as she finished labeling the video file, her cell phone rang. She glanced down at the unknown number. For a moment, she debated not answering, but something in her gut made her pick up. "Hello," she said. Silence crackled for a moment, then a gruff voice spoke. "Miss Maya Jefferson?" Her pulse quickened. "Yes, this is she. This is Detective Brian Costell, NYPD Internal Affairs. I received a message from Marcus Reed about an incident involving two officers, Troy Miller and Kevin Rohr. I'd like to meet with you." Maya's heart lifted slightly. She hadn't expected an Internal Affairs detective to contact her so quickly, but it was a promising sign. Of course, detective when's good for you. The detective suggested the following morning at a small conference room in the NYPD headquarters. Maya agreed and ended the call with a glimmer of hope. Someone within the system was willing to investigate. Yet that evening, as Maya was preparing dinner in her tiny kitchen, she received another unexpected call. This time, it was from an NYPD desk officer informing her that there was now a warrant for her arrest on charges of resisting arrest and obstruction. The news hit her like a punch to the gut. She nearly dropped her phone. The officer stated that Maya was required to report to the local precinct or face additional penalties. Her mind reeled. They had actually done it, twisted the story to paint her as the aggressor. She cursed under her breath, panic rising with fury. Then she remembered who she was. She inhaled, holding on to her composure. This was beyond mere intimidation. It was a calculated move to scare her and tarnish her record before she could push forward with her complaint. If she were arrested, even for a moment, a mugshot and public record could follow her for years. For a moment, Maya felt a wave of despair, but she steadied herself. She was not alone, and she had the truth. Grabbing her keys, her documents, and a charged phone, Maya marched out the door, ready to confront the precinct. She was armed with the only weapon that truly mattered, her legal knowledge. Late evening had fallen by the time Maya arrived at the 78th Precinct in Brooklyn. The building's cold, brick exterior loomed under flickering streetlights. She parked her car and took a moment to compose herself, mentally going through checklists of the law. Her breath came quickly, betraying the nerves she tried to mask under her professional exterior. When Maya stepped into the station, the stale smell of sweat and old coffee assaulted her senses. Officers milled about, some handling paperwork, others chatting idly. The moment she approached the counter, heads turned. She told the desk sergeant she was there guarding a warrant. The desk sergeant, a graying man with tired eyes, seemed perplexed at first, perhaps not expecting the subject of a warrant to calmly walk in. He instructed her to wait. Maya settled into a plastic chair under flickering fluorescent lights, ignoring the suspicious glares from some officers. After an agonizing half hour, a young officer led her to a small interrogation room. Its cinder-block walls were painted in off-white, and a single overhead light buzzed faintly. Maya set her documents on the table, her heart thudding. Shortly after, Detective Brian Costello entered. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had a neatly trimmed beard. Maya recognized his voice from the phone call. He gave her a nod that was somewhere between professional courtesy and sympathy. "Miss Jefferson, thank you for coming in," he said. "I understand there's a warrant out for your arrest, but I also spoke with Marcus Reed, who said you have information that might clear this up." Maya handed him the summons for speeding, the short Twitter video clip on a USB drive, and the notes she had taken about the encounter. He scanned them briefly, frowning. Detective Costello scratched his chin and leaned forward. "This is serious. Officers Miller and Rohr filed a report claiming you resisted, tried to flee, and verbally threatened them." "That's a lie," Maya said, working to keep her voice steady. She tapped the USB. "That clip shows part of the stop. I didn't resist. If anything, they were the aggressors." Costello exhaled. "I'm not the judge here, but I can see there's more to this than meets the eye. For formality's sake, we have to process you, but I'll do it discreetly. Then we can start an investigation. I'll ask the district attorney's office to hold off on pressing charges until we've reviewed everything." Maya's heart sank at the idea of being processed. She nodded, though she understood the protocol. "All right," she managed. He escorted her through a series of hallways. Maya's cheeks burned with humiliation as she was fingerprinted. Caroline Whitaker stood first, her expression impassive, outlining the charges of resisting arrest, obstruction of governmental administration, and disorderly conduct. She claimed that Maya had become belligerent during a lawful traffic stop, refused to comply with officer instructions, and even attempted to flee. At that last statement, Maya nearly snorted in disbelief. Stella placed a steady hand on her arm, cautioning her to remain composed. Once Caroline finished, Stella cleared her throat and stepped forward. "Your Honor," she began, her voice calm but resonant, "my client categorically denies these charges. We have video evidence, brief but crucial, that contradicts the officer's account. Miss Jefferson not only cooperated fully, but was subjected to an improper search and humiliating treatment." Judge Harrison peered over his reading glasses. "Video evidence. Is it from a body cam?" "It's from a bystander," Stella replied. "Shot on a cell phone and posted online. We have the original file as well." Caroline interjected. "Your Honor, I caution reliance on shaky cell phone videos. There's no guarantee of authenticity. My officers have clean records, and the official police report states the defendant resisted. We have no reason to doubt their testimony." Judge Harrison frowned slightly. "I'll allow the video, but it must be verified. For now, we'll proceed with the arraignment. Miss Jefferson, how you plead?" Stella spoke before Maya could respond. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Harrison made a note. "Very well. Let's schedule a preliminary hearing to review the evidence." He glanced up at Maya for the first time, his gaze lingering. Maya felt an unsettling chill, as though he were assessing more than just her posture. "Bail is set at $55,000. Next matter." Maya's cheeks flamed with indignation at the idea of bail for such a charge, but Stella had prepared for this. She posted bail immediately. As Maya turned to leave, her eyes locked with Officer Miller's. He smirked, his lips mouthing words she couldn't fully discern, but the contempt was unmistakable. She forced herself to turn away. Out in the hallway, Stella led her to a bench. "This is going to be an uphill battle with Harrison on the bench," Stella sighed. "And that Whitaker, she's got a reputation for defending the police at all costs." Maya stared at the corridor's drab walls, her mind racing. I'm not backing down. I need to speak with the Civil Rights Division. This could become a federal matter. Stella nodded. I agree. The moment you reveal your position with the DOJ, it'll change the game. But do you want to tip your hand so soon? Maya paused, considering. Not yet, she said finally. I need more evidence, more insight into these officers' track records. And if Harrison tries to railroad this, we'll see about moving it to federal court. Stella agreed, and they parted ways after scheduling a strategy meeting. Maya walked out of the courthouse with an uneasy mix of anger and steely resolve. The subtle slights, the humiliating pat-down, the malicious charges, none of it would deter her. She pulled out her phone to call Marcus, telling him the next steps. She also planned to reach out to a contact at the Civil Rights Division, laying the groundwork for a potential investigation into these officers. As she stepped onto the bustling street, Maya felt the wind on her face, a reminder of her freedom and her will. She thought about how many others, less equipped than she, might have been crushed by this system. A silent promise echoed in her mind. She would not be broken. She would fight this injustice head-on, and when the time was right, she would let them know exactly who they were dealing with. After the initial court appearance, Maya dove headfirst into gathering more evidence. She and Stella constructed a meticulous defense strategy, guided by Maya's unique insider knowledge of how prosecutors operate. During her free hours, late into the night, she pored over case law, studied previous complaints against officers Miller and Rohr, and analyzed the local precinct's record of misconduct allegations. Marcus put Maya in touch with Samira Green, a staff attorney at the New York Civil Liberties Union, who specialized in police accountability. Over a cup of coffee at a local cafe, Samira agreed to help Maya in her fight for justice. Over dinner, Maya shared the details of her case with Samira, who quickly provided a trove of insights into officers Miller and Rohr's histories. Samira explained that the officers had been named in at least 3 prior complaints for excessive force, though none had resulted in formal discipline. The complaints had all been dismissed for lack of evidence. Samira sighed, pushing the files toward Maya. The patterns are there, she said. We just need to prove it conclusively. And since you have that video, that's a start. Maya thumbed through the documents, her heart pounding. She saw statements from individuals who claimed they'd been harassed or manhandled by Miller and Rohr. Her eyes scanned the lines about unlawful searches, intimidation, and racial slurs. The language of complainants varied, but the core allegations were disturbingly similar. The officers had targeted people of color during traffic stops and escalated the encounters without clear justification. Why weren't any of these complaints sustained? Maya asked softly, though she already suspected the answer. Samira rolled her eyes. You know how it goes. Witnesses can't be tracked down. Internal Affairs finds some technical reason to dismiss them, or the judge gives officers the benefit of the doubt. It's a systemic thing. Maya clenched her jaw. Well, maybe this time will be different. Samira smiled, a hint of optimism shining through her fatigue. It might be. You have the credentials, and you clearly know how to navigate the system. Just be cautious. The pushback could get ugly. Armed with these files, Maya returned to her office at the Department of Justice. She walked a fine line. She hadn't officially disclosed her predicament to her direct supervisors, worried they might remove her from active cases, or worse, question her ability to remain unbiased. Still, she confided in one colleague, Jennifer Roble, who had become a close friend over the years. Jennifer listened intently as Maya laid out the events. This is insane, Jennifer said, pacing the office. These officers clearly picked the wrong person to harass. But Maya, you gotta protect yourself. The minute they find out you're a federal attorney, it could escalate. Maya nodded. I know. But if I reveal at the right time, it might scare them into dropping the case or possibly open them up to federal charges. She hesitated, then added, I just hope the judge doesn't dismiss me outright because of some prejudice. Jennifer folded her arms. If he does, you file a motion to recuse him or transfer. You have the law on your side. And if that fails, well, the Civil Rights Division might open a full-blown investigation. The possibility buoyed Maya's spirits. The Department of Justice had, in recent years, become more active in investigating police departments for patterns of unlawful conduct. If Maya could present compelling evidence, perhaps the DOJ would step in. She had no illusions. It could take months, if not years, to see real accountability. But she would prepare for the long haul. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of legal motions. Stella filed a motion to dismiss the charges, citing contradictory evidence in the police report and the cell phone footage. Meanwhile, Maya quietly reached out to the bystander who had filmed the stop. The woman, Kesha Brown, was initially reluctant to get involved, but once Maya explained the stakes, Kesha agreed to provide a sworn statement. Her affidavit described the entire incident, emphasizing that Maya never raised her voice, never physically resisted, and complied with every order the officers gave. Kesha also recounted hearing the officers mutter demeaning comments about Maya being one of those loudmouths and acting above her station. Though the statements weren't overtly racial, the undertones were clear. Maya's got twisted as she read it. It was the same kind of ugly prejudice she had felt in every glare and mocking sneer from Miller and Rohr. Finally, the day of the preliminary hearing arrived. Maya, Stella, and Marcus walked into the courthouse, armed with sworn statements, video evidence, and a stack of the officers' past complaints. Maya felt an anxious energy crackling through her. This was the moment where she would confront the system head-on, where everything she had worked for and sacrificed would either break or begin to take shape. Maya's mind raced, wondering if the evidence would expose the officers or at least plant doubt in the judge's mind. Yet one question gnawed at her. Would Judge Harrison actually consider the evidence fairly? She took her seat at the defense table, across from prosecution team led by Caroline Whitaker, who sat confidently with the officers. Whitaker's self-assured expression suggested she already had the judge's verdict in her pocket. Miller and Rohr stared directly at Maya, arms folded, daring her to meet their gaze. Maya didn't flinch. She inhaled deeply, clasped her hands, and reminded herself she wasn't just fighting for her own vindication. She was fighting for everyone who had been silenced or discredited by officers like Miller and Rohr. As the court clerk called the case, Maya's eyes flicked to the judge's bench. Judge Harrison stepped in, his robe flowing as he cleared his throat, preparing to begin. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears. Whatever happened next could determine if the truth would finally see the light or if the system's ingrained bias would crush her too. The preliminary hearing opened with formalities. Judge Harrison, his expression stony, ordered both sides to present their arguments. Caroline Whitaker rose to the lectern first, methodically outlining the police narrative. She claimed that Maya had allegedly refused multiple commands, acted aggressively, and impeded the officers' lawful investigation. Whitaker described Maya's behavior in hyperbolic terms, painting her as an out-of-control individual who had no respect for law enforcement. Maya's stomach churned the lies, but she schooled her features into neutrality. Next, Stella took the floor with measured confidence. She introduced the cell phone video, playing it for the court. The short clip showed Maya calmly standing by her car, while Officer Rohr forcibly patted her down. There was no sign of aggression on Maya's part. In the background, snippets of the officers' sneered comments could be heard, albeit faintly. Stella pointed out the lack of any audible commands from the officers that Maya allegedly refused. Judge Harrison leaned forward, peering at the screen. A flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, passed across his face before it hardened again. Once the video ended, Stella called Kesha Brown to stand. Kesha testified that she had recorded the video and witnessed the incident from start to finish. She emphasized that Maya never resisted or obstructed. She also recounted hearing one officer call Maya a loudmouth, though she couldn't identify which one specifically. Whitaker rose for cross-examination, her voice dripping with skepticism. "Miss Brown, could you have missed something while filming? Isn't it possible Miss Jefferson resisted before you started recording?" "No," Kesha replied firmly, meeting Whitaker's gaze. "I started recording the moment I saw them pull her out of the car. She didn't struggle or yell." Whitaker pressed further. "But you only captured a few seconds of the incident. There could have been more." Kesha stood her ground. "I watched the whole thing from across the street." She was calm the entire time. When Kesha stepped down, Stella presented the complaint records against Officers Miller and Rohr. Whitaker objected, claiming they were irrelevant. Judge Harrison frowned. seeming inclined to agree with Whitaker for a moment. Maya feared he might strike the evidence entirely. But Stella argued that the officer's history of similar complaints showed a pattern of misconduct. Harrison allowed a brief discussion of the records, but only as context, refusing to let them overshadow the current case. Caroline Whitaker then called Officer Miller to testify. He spoke in a clipped tone, detailing how Maya allegedly refused to comply by questioning their authority. He described Maya's irate, claiming she had screamed and made threats. Maya's frustration mounted. None of it was true. Then Rohr took the stand, echoing Miller's statements. They both stuck to the script, doubling down on Maya's alleged aggression. Throughout their testimony, Maya sensed Judge Harrison's patience wearing thin, though not necessarily with the officers. The judge seemed annoyed that the defense would dare challenge law enforcement's version of events. His tone grew sharper each time Stella objected or asked pointed questions. Finally, Stella informed the court that Maya herself would testify. Maya felt the weight of the moment as she rose, stepping into the spotlight. The case had reached a critical point, her chance to speak the truth and confront the officers who had twisted it. Maya wished to testify. She stood, smoothing her suit jacket, and walked to the witness stand, nerves dancing in her stomach. She glanced at the judge, who regarded her with a hint of displeasure, perhaps bracing for an emotional plea. But Maya had no intention of making an emotional spectacle. She was there to tell the truth. Under Stella's questioning, Maya recounted the stop with calm precision. She clarified that she had never resisted and had only asked about the reason for the search. Stella guided her through how the officers had escalated the situation. Then came the cross-examination. Caroline Whitaker approached, her eyes cool. "Miss Jefferson," she began, "is it true that you questioned the officer's decision to stop you and conduct a search?" Maya nodded. "Yes. I asked why I was being searched. That's not illegal. I never refused to comply." Whitaker's lips curved slightly. "But you did speak back to them, correct? You didn't remain silent." Maya resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "Asking questions is not resisting, counselor." Whitaker's voice hardened. "Isn't it possible that you were irritated and hostile? Perhaps the officers perceive your tone as threatening." Maya took a measured breath. "I used a calm tone the entire time, which is evident from the video. The officer's perception doesn't align with the actual footage." At that point, Maya felt a surge of adrenaline. This was her moment. She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, if I may, there's additional context regarding my understanding of the law during that stop." Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow. "What context is that?" Maya looked at him squarely. "I am an assistant U.S. attorney with the Department of Justice, Eastern District of New York." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Stella stood a bit taller. Whitaker's eyes widened momentarily, before narrowing. Officers Miller and Rohr exchanged stunned glances. Judge Harrison's face froze for a moment. The tension in the room hung thick, as though the very walls of the courtroom had been shocked into silence. Maya continued, her voice steady. "I didn't reveal my position at the time of the stop to avoid any conflict of interest or the appearance of impropriety. But I am intimately familiar with the constitutional standards regarding search and seizure. I knew I was in the right. I complied anyway because I feared for my safety. The officers were aggressive and made demeaning remarks. That is the full truth of this matter." Gasps and whispered remarks filled the room. The revelation was a bombshell. Judge Harrison blinked rapidly, trying to regain composure. Whitaker stammered. "Well, Your Honor, her position doesn't grant her immunity from the law. She's still—" But Harrison raised a hand, his eyes flicking from Maya to the officers. "Indeed, it does not," he said carefully. "But it certainly adds weight to her understanding of the situation." The courtroom buzzed like an electric wire. Maya felt the shift in the air, an undeniable pivot in the power dynamics. The racist officers and the skeptical judge had just discovered that the woman they had tried to railroad wasn't merely a random defendant. She was someone who could navigate the federal system. And that single fact changed everything. The revelation of Maya's position as a U.S. attorney triggered a cascade of events. Within 24 hours, a wave of internal and external scrutiny descended on the NYPD. Detective Brian Costello, previously cautious, suddenly had the impetus and political cover to dig deeper into Miller and Rohr's conduct. Meanwhile, Maya's own supervisors at the Department of Justice, once made aware of the situation, convened a special meeting to discuss whether the DOJ should launch a formal civil rights investigation. In the days following preliminary hearing, Maya witnessed a stark change in the courtroom's atmosphere. Judge Harrison, who had been aloof and somewhat dismissive, became notably more measured in his tone. During a subsequent motion hearing, he referred to Maya as Counsel Jefferson, acknowledging her legal standing in a way that subtly signaled the playing field had shifted. Miller and Rohr, seated at the prosecution's table, looked less smug. They seemed to sense the tide turning against them. Outside the courtroom, Maya's life was upended. Reporters, alerted by the public court transcripts, swarmed the courthouse entrance. They smelled a headline: U.S. Attorney accuses NYPD officers of racial profiling. Maya tried to avoid the cameras, ducking into cabs or side exits to escape the throng of microphones. She wasn't seeking publicity, only justice. But in a city as large and media-driven as New York, such sensational details didn't stay quiet for long. Her superiors at the DOJ were equally concerned about the optics. Assistant Attorney General Vanessa Castillo summoned Maya to a private office for a long conversation. Castillo, a composed woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair, eyed Maya carefully over the rim of her glasses. "I've reviewed the court transcripts," Castillo said, folding her hands on top of the file in front of her. "This is a delicate situation. You understand that?" Maya nodded, bracing herself. "Yes, ma'am." Castillo's gaze softened slightly. "First, I want to say how sorry I am that you had to endure such treatment. We take allegations of misconduct seriously, but as you know, whenever a DOJ attorney is involved in a personal legal matter that reflects on law enforcement, it complicates things. We have to ensure there's no conflict of interest." "I understand," Maya replied, her voice steady. "I'm not asking the DOJ to represent me personally, only to look into these officers if the evidence warrants a civil rights investigation." Castillo leaned back, tapping a pen against her desk. "Detective Costello from NYPD Internal Affairs has already been in contact. The Civil Rights Division is reviewing your complaint and the prior complaints against these officers. There's also the possibility of a pattern in practice investigation into the precinct if we find credible evidence that this is systemic." Maya felt a surge of hope. "So, the department is taking it seriously?" "Yes," Castillo affirmed. "But Maya, be prepared. This will likely get messy. The local police union may retaliate, the media coverage could intensify, and there's always the risk of a conflict between federal and local authorities." Maya steeled herself. "I'm ready." Once she left Castillo's office, Maya exhaled, feeling a little lighter. For years, she had worked on behalf of the government, often prosecuting financial crimes or assisting with civil rights cases from an institutional standpoint. Now, the institution was compelled to examine one of its most entrenched partnerships, local law enforcement. As the investigation gained traction, Maya spent hours with federal investigators detailing her incident, providing the video evidence, and turning over the records Samira Green had shared. Detective Costello, too, ramped up interviews. He spoke with Kesha Brown, the other complainants, and local witnesses who had negative encounters with Miller and Rohr. Rumors swirled that these officers were part of a clique within the precinct, known for targeting minorities with spurious traffic stops to meet quotas. Maya thought about all the people who might have suffered in silence. Now, their voices had a chance to be heard. Meanwhile, the legal case against Maya didn't magically disappear. Whitaker stubbornly refused to drop the charges, perhaps out of fear that doing so would confirm wrongdoing. A court date loomed for the next hearing, during which Stella planned to present the new findings from the DOJ investigation, hoping to have the charges dismissed outright. Tensions ran high. Maya noticed her phone vibrating with unknown callers more frequently. She began receiving anonymous voicemails, some supportive, others threatening. Marcus advised her to be cautious, and Maya started varying her routine, staying vigilant whenever she traveled, especially at night. Then, relief crashed over Maya like a wave. Stella squeezed her hand. A ripple of low chatter coursed through the gallery. Whitaker's shoulders sagged as she turned to whisper furiously at Miller and Rohr. The officers looked stunned, their faces washed with the realization that they were no longer in control of the narrative. Judge Harrison wrapped his